Nick Nilson, welcome to the Mindset Advantage podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a couple months, man. I'm so glad that it's finally here.
DJ, honored, man, to spend some time with you. Love what you do with your platform. Love how you inspire and encourage. Glad to hang.
Thanks, brother. I think we have a lot in common, and I'm just excited to get into the conversation. First and foremost, man, you just released an amazing new book. It's phenomenal, man. It's called You Can Live the Dream, the foreword by Joel Osteen. It's a phenomenal book. Whether you are a churchgoer, a believer in faith, whatever, anybody can read this book and pull some stuff out of it. So today what we're going to do is go through some of the stories, some of the chapters, some of the principles in it. I think first, Nick, what I want to ask is, what does it mean to live the dream? I mean, let's start real basic here. Let's set the table. What does it mean to live? What does it mean to live the dream, man?
Yeah, DJ, that it's a cultural cliche, right? Like you see it on Instagram, you see it captioned by people, bumper stickers, where have you, and it's usually used for people to describe like the incredible vacation, or they've reached a milestone, or this certain moment in their life, or an achievement, and it's describing what they presume to be ultimate success, joy, happiness, peace, contentment. I'm living the dream. And I just feel like you don't have to live long to know that those things ultimately can't provide you sustainable contentment and peace and satisfaction. They're good in the moment, but they don't last long, right? And I just passionately believe that you don't have to limit your dream to a destination. You don't have to wait until you achieve a certain place in your career, a certain place in relationships. You don't have to wait until your bank account reaches a certain number to experience a deep amount of peace and satisfaction and joy. And so I think you can live the dream right now. You don't have to wait to live the dream until you get to that place. You can experience it every day. You do not have to limit your dream to a destination. And I think it really starts with one thing, and it's a change of perspective. I think as you navigate through my book and different things that I've written, it's about perspective and the power of perspective. And, two people can be looking at the same thing and derive two different things from it and experience two different things from it. I mean, your external circumstances don't determine your quality of life. Your perspective of those circumstances does. And I just believe it's an important message that is key for everybody in reaching their full potential and experiencing peace and joy and contentment right where they're at right now. Nothing has to change, and you can experience it with a change of perspective.
I love that, man. I've told a couple times on this podcast a story about this painting that I saw when I was a kid. And basically the painting was two guys sitting on a bench. And one guy said, they're twins. One guy said, my dad's an alcoholic, so I have no choice but to be an alcoholic. And the other guy says, my dad's an alcoholic, so I have no choice but to not be an alcoholic. Right. So the external environment is both the same, but the perspective is different. And we read that and we talk about that, Nick, and we're like, yeah, I'd rather be the second twin that sees it and changes it because of perspective. But sometimes I think it's hard to see it that way. It's hard to have that perspective. What are the steps? What are the strategies? How do you help people to have a better perspective? What does that look like?
Well, I think it really just starts with just understanding, number one, who's in control, and understanding who made you with a purpose. And I think obviously for me, I'm a believer, and I believe that Jesus gives us this awesome opportunity to see our lives through a unique faith lens. And I think for me, that's where faith comes into play when it comes to your situations and circumstances. Typically, what makes it hard with perspective is when we're faced with challenges, right? When we're faced with a setback in our career, whatever field you're in. If you're an athlete, if you're faced with disappointment, a giant, a closed door, that's to me when perspective is paramount, because I can either choose to stare at it and see it in its face for what it is, or I can see it, recognize it, and then look beyond it. And I think with faith, it allows us to see our circumstances, and especially our challenges and our setbacks, through a completely different lens. And I think when you gain that perspective of faith and you begin to operate in that, you can go, all right, I'm not necessarily where I want to be, but I know God's got me. I know he's in control. I know he's fighting my battles. If he allowed this one door to close, it's because he's got a better door aligned for me, waiting for me to walk into. And I'm going to have the faith to step towards it, stay in faith, stay encouraged, stay in peace and joy, trusting him that he's the architect of my life. He holds the blueprint. So this disappointment isn't a setback. If I trust him, it can be a setup to something greater. And I think that is a practical thing that we can remind ourselves of every day. And it's really embracing a perspective of faith.
One of my questions I had for you was, what's preventing people from living their dream? If we know that, we want to live the dream, what's preventing people from doing it? I think you answered it a little bit already, Nick, was that what's preventing them is that they're delaying it and they're saying, I'll be happy when.
Yes.
Can you talk on that a little bit more? Because I think that's pretty prevalent, man, is I'll be happy when the kid comes. I'll be happy when the job, and we kind of just keep pushing this thing out. And you and I both know that that reward is very fleeting. So can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, like you said, reward is fleeting. I think it's looking at things or created things to be the ultimate source of my happiness. And if I can get that job, or if I can get married, or if I can get to that college, and those are all great things, DJ, right? Like, I'm not saying don't pursue them, don't dream, don't have aspirations, but it's when you expect those things to make you happy. When you put the responsibility on other people, you put the responsibility on money, you put the responsibility on a degree or a title to make you ultimately fulfilled and happy, it's going to be a challenge, because those things can't fully satisfy your soul. They can't fully complete you. They can complement, they're good, but they can't ultimately satisfy you. And so I think it really comes down to where you're expecting your fulfillment to come from. And I think if I move into my life already fulfilled because of my faith and my relationship with God, I come into my life already with purpose. I'm living from purpose. I'm living from contentment. I'm not looking for external things to bring me contentment and satisfaction. I'm already good. And I think that's the game changer, is when I live from that position, everything else is an addition. Everything else is bonus. And so I think that's ultimately the thing, is what are you expecting from things in your life? Because they're not going to bring you what you ultimately hoped them to bring.
I love it. The first chapter is a great one. You talk about, choosing the right perspective, and there's a story in there that kicks it off really well. Can we talk about the story in the drowning in worms? I think this really portrays what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, my son Denver was 6 years old, and I wanted to start this lifelong tradition, fishing, and just seeing if there's something we can build around and bond around as he got older. And so I took him to a bayou that has water and fish in it near our house. And it was a hot summer Houston afternoon. I got all our tackle gear, poles, everything's ready. I got the worms. And so we ride our bikes over to this bayou. We sit on the side of the bayou and we start casting. And, 10, 20, 30 minutes go by. And I noticed that Denver is, pretty content. He's pretty happy for a 6-year-old kid. We're not getting any bites. We're not catching anything. And I'm getting frustrated. I'm sitting on this ledge going, this attempt to make this lifelong tradition with my son a success is failing. It's not going as good as I hoped it to be. Well, over time, Denver starts like losing worms in the water, and he starts reeling them back up, and he's like, hey Dad, can you hook a new worm on? So I spent most of my time, DJ, like baiting hooks for him, getting him out of trouble, getting him out of snags. Didn't catch anything. No, not even a bite. So we're there like 2 hours. I don't remember how long. It's just a long time. I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I'm frustrated. We get back up to our bikes, we get trekking home, and I look at Denver and I'm like, man, I'm thinking in my mind, dude, this is done. This is a horrible experience. And I said, D, what'd you think of fishing? What's your overall what's your evaluation? He goes, Dad, I love drowning worms with you. And I'm sitting there like, what? You thought this whole time we're drowning worms? And so for him, it was a huge success, because we're there to drown worms, and he drowned like 20 worms that day, and I'm obviously there to catch fish. That was my perspective of our time together. And he's like, man, I'm drowning worms, hanging with Dad, chalk it up, big win. Let's do this every day. And for me, I'm like, this is miserable. But again, we were there doing the same thing, seemingly the same thing, right? But two unique perspectives means that we walked away with two different results in our minds, two different attitudes, because we were looking at it through two different lenses.
Oh man, that's such a great story. And I think that's the word, right, Nick, is attitude. It's like, what's the attitude you're going to bring? I always say attitude is the most important decision you're going to make every day, because it's the decision that's within your control. How are you going to show up? It's in your control on how you want to show up. So you can show up negative attitude, or you can show up going, hey, no matter what happens today, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to pull something out of this experience. If I don't catch a fish, if I don't make the job, if I don't get what, I'm going to pull something out of this. There's a lesson somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I think there is, you never lose, you learn, right? And there's always something to learn in every season of our life. In fact, I think there's often more to learn and more to gain through difficult, challenging seasons than there are from successful ones. And I think I always tell people, God doesn't waste pain, and you have the decision not to waste pain either. And I think it's one of those things where there's such deep character building. There's deep things buried in what seems like insignificant seasons, but a lot of times we want to graduate from them and move on. Like, I didn't want this job, I'm not here, or I don't like being single, or I don't like where my kids are at. And it's like, man, if we would just stop and go, wait, there's great purpose here. And if I'm not careful, I can breeze past it and miss the lessons that are buried here. Like, there's blessings in disguise. And I just think there's miracles in the mundane, and it's our choice, like you said, to approach it with the right perspective, the right attitude, to go, wait, what's here today that I can be equipped with, that I'm going to need for my future? There are things God's hidden in this season of my life that he wants to equip me with, or I wouldn't be here, so that I can sustain the great place he has for me. Right. I think that's the key of having the right perspective, is you're not missing the gold that's quote unquote in the garbage every day through hard times, through difficult seasons.
I love that. Listeners, if you didn't hear that, don't waste the pain. If you got something to write down, don't waste the pain. What a great lesson, Nick. I want to go on to chapter 3. Is probably one of my top 2 favorites. Progress over perfection. So we were talking off air. As a mental performance coach, I teach these 7 skills. And one of the skills that I actually taught this morning was this idea of process over outcome, or process over prize. Thinking about the day-to-day, not being perfect, not thinking about all this outcome stuff, but what do we got to focus on right in front of you? And you talk about progress over perfection. Celebrate the good on the way to great. I haven't heard of it like that before.
Yeah.
Talk to the listeners a little bit about, what does it mean to be celebrate the good on the way to great?
Yeah, I think I believe when you look at the book of Genesis and you see in the beginning, God created everything, and every day he maps out the plan. And I think we know that after the first day, creation's not finished. It's incomplete, right? But we know he's working on it, and he's gonna complete it. We're going to get to day 6. We're going to get to day 7. But after each day, the scripture stops and says, it's good. He created day 1. This is what it included. It was good. And I think you see this pattern early on in our creator that gave us a model, meaning celebrate the good, even though it's not finished. And I think we're all aspiring to grow. We're all aspiring to achieve a higher level in our career or in our sport, wherever it may be. But I think it's important to, as God showed us, celebrating the good on the way to great. When he finished, he stepped back and said, now it's very good. Like, now it's very good. And so I just think it's that principle of learning to celebrate the good. Oftentimes, DJ, we're so overwhelmed with what's unfinished in our life, or how much more we have left to grow, certain areas of our life. But I just think there's such power in being grateful, such power in looking back and celebrating, such power in taking the small things that we have progressed in and going, you know what? I may not be where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. And let's just celebrate this good. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm big basketball. I mean, watching the finals, watching the NBA, you see these pro athletes making millions. They make a free throw. I was watching the finals, game 1. They make a free throw. All of them stop, and they strategically, intentionally high five the guy who made it. I'm going, that's LeBron James. He's getting paid millions to make a free throw. That free throw didn't win him the game. That free throw didn't win him the final. It's one free throw, yet they understand the power of celebrating a small step on the way. It builds momentum. It builds confidence. It's not taking things for granted. It's going, hey, we're going to be present. This was a win. We didn't even win the game, but we're going to celebrate it. And I just think it's powerful for our attitude. It's powerful for our growth to just continue to celebrate on them. And that can be applied to a mom who sees a kid growing, a coach who sees an athlete growing. It, like you said, DJ, I mean, this is what you love to do, but it's applying it in every area of someone's life.
Love this, man. So well said. I had this whole chapter or this whole page underlined here, but it comes down to this last little sentence, and I'll just read it again for you. It says, he was establishing, he being God, he was establishing another important principle. If you don't learn to see the good in the unfinished, you'll never get to very good. So if you don't learn to see the good in the unfinished, you'll never get to that very good point. Enjoy the good. Thank God for the good. Be grateful for the good so that you know the difference between good and very good.
It's awesome. So good.
I think sometimes we struggle, Nick, with celebrating those little wins, right? Because we're always thinking about how far I am away. I'm not even close to where I want to be. Or, sometimes the small wins are hard to notice because it's our own lives, but it's like the weight loss journey, right? You're like, man, I'm not losing weight. But then you see somebody at Christmas that you hadn't seen in a year. They're like, dang, lost a lot of weight, but we don't see the victories within us because we have this negative bias, man. What's the applicable strategy? If you can't tell, I like giving something that the listeners can do. How can we do a better job at celebrating the little wins? What does it look like?
Well, I think you even give one good example. I mean, when it comes to weight loss, I mean, I've talked to people who even read the book, and one of the chapters I unpack just, hey, maybe you didn't eat the whole pack of Oreos. Maybe you only ate 3 of them. Celebrate it, high five somebody. I think it's number one. I think part of it is surrounding yourself with people that you can high five with and that will celebrate. I mean, you mentioned seeing someone significant on Christmas. Well, what if you intentionally brought some people in around you that could, I don't like to use the word accountable, but I think people who will celebrate those wins when they see them happen in your life. I think whether it's your spouse or a close friend that you trust, that you love, someone that you can say, hey, this is what I'm attempting to do. This is the weight I'm wanting to lose. Can you help me? Can you inspire me? Can you celebrate with me? And I think I've had people in my own life who've celebrated the progress along the way. They knew I wasn't finished. They knew I had a long way to go, but I gave them permission and asked them, hey, walk with me on this journey. And I think relationships are so key. Who you surround yourself is so important to help you, to keep you accountable, to speak truth in love, to celebrate. I mean, my wife, she deals with vertigo, and it's been an 8-year battle. And it's something we've went to doctors for. We've tried millions of tests for. We haven't got an answer. We're going to believe God, and we're still trusting that he's going to heal. But as we wait in faith, she continues to try to take steps. It hurts for her to drive. It hurts for, it exasperates the vertigo for her to do things that, elevators, flying, those types of things. Well, she drove an hour one day to meet up with me and some friends in a house. And me and my friend knew for her to get into a car and drive across Houston, it was going to be a big step of faith for her. And she did it, and she got there. And when our friend saw her come in the door, she went over and high-fived Summer and was like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, big step. I know it was hard for you. Now, everyone else in the room was like, what's the big deal? Like, she got in a car and drove, but they didn't know what it costed her. They didn't know what it took for her to get in that car, push through the vertigo, and quote unquote, drive in faith, believing, hey, I'm going to get there and everything's going to be okay. But to me, the key was the friend who saw it, recognized it, high-fived it. And I think we just need people in our lives who can celebrate us. And, Summer's brought in some intentional people that can speak faith over her, speak life over her, and celebrate with her.
So it sounds like, not only do we celebrate our own wins, but be the person that's helped celebrating other people's small victories.
Yeah.
Because that, Nick, that right there, you might illuminate something to them where they go, oh, man, I didn't even, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think that that was a small win because I showed up to the gym today or whatever it's going to be, right? Like I think that's what we're
Yeah.
saying, right? Is internally, but also externally. Look for other people's small wins, and maybe that'll help illuminate a little bit more of a more victorious life.
Yeah, man. I mean, you talk about the gym. I was at the gym this morning, and when I was walking out of the gym, there was someone I saw passing coming in. I didn't know them, and they were like, "Oh man, I'm just dragging today." They were giving all the reasons of why today wasn't going to be a good workout as they're coming in, and I just simply looked at them and smiled. I said, "You're here." You know what I mean? You could be anywhere else. You're here. Whether this workout is a 10 out of 10 or it's a 5 out of 10, you're here. There's 95% of other people who are sleeping right now at 6 a.m., but you're in the gym. And I just walked by, like, hopefully that encouraged them. And it was like a mental high five to just say, hey, you're here. You know what I mean? Like, celebrate it. You may feel like junk. It may not be the best workout, but you put effort, you're here, and let's believe for gains. So I'm with you on it.
I love it. And I just feel compelled to add a little bit more. So, as a men's performance coach, this is what I work with a lot, Nick. And I love that you said progress over perfection. I love those words because what I've noticed working with some kids is that they think that perfection is the highest level, right? I'm striving for perfection. And what my mentor taught me was it was just a great breakthrough for me was perfection isn't the highest level. Nobody is perfect. So you trying to attain and try to strive for that perfection, one, it's never going to happen. And two, you might think it's a strong mindset, but actually that's weak. And it's a weak mindset because it's unattainable. So instead, get rid of the word perfection. I don't want you ever saying the word perfect. It's not something you should strive for or even want to do. So let's get rid of that vocabulary. So I love that you use the word perfection as like, hey, it's on the bottom. We're getting rid of it. Instead, it's progress. It's one day at a time. The man who loves to walk will walk further than the man who loves the destination.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, one time we were building a house, and for us, I think a lot of times too, DJ, you think about things that happen in your life. Maybe it's not even your personal progress, but it's just where where you desire to be in your future. And, something happens, a storm comes, and everything in it, like in front of you, doesn't look like how you would hope your life to look like right now. Like this isn't coming together how I had imagined or how I thought, or the dream, how it started or it's supposed to look. And I remember going and watching our house get built. And there was one particular scene, we'd come over every day. We were walking the foundation and we were watching everything get constructed. And there's huge storm for like 3 days straight in Houston. And we come over to our house at the lot where it was being built. I mean, it's a mess, bro. I mean, there's water just standing in the foundation. There's like 2x4s everywhere, trash everywhere from the builders. There's just stuff. It was a mess. Looked like a war zone. And I called my builder and I said, hey, is everything okay with the house? I'm just checking in. I'm like, this doesn't look too good. And he goes, Nick, I'm the builder. I got the blueprint. A storm's not going to keep the house from moving forward. I know right now it doesn't appear that way. It appears you got 3 feet in the foundation of your home, but trust me, I'm holding the plan. This isn't going to derail where I'm taking this thing. Be at ease. And I think oftentimes we can feel that way when we look at our life or look at our personal progress. Is I know the blueprint, I know the dream, I know where I'm supposed to be, but it doesn't look like it right now because of this storm or this setback. But I just want to encourage people. God's the architect of your life. He holds the blueprint. He's got the plans. He has a purpose for you. So don't allow this storm to set you back or to give up or to quit and say, oh, it's over. Trust God. He's got it. If he started it in your life, he's faithful to finish it. And so just trust him in the process.
Nick, you're on fire, man. Giving me goosebumps. Let's go to my second favorite chapter. It's Do It Afraid. And I think you got to tell the story about Do It Afraid to set the table, man. This is a great story. What's Do It Afraid all about?
Do It Afraid. I was in college and my 2 friends were like, hey, we got to go skydiving. And I'm like, you guys are nuts, but I'm in. Let's do this. So we go to Skydive Chicago, right outside of Chicago, and never been skydiving before. And in the state of Illinois, you have to jump 2 times with tandem with an instructor on your back before you can go solo. So we get there, we do our training, we get suited up, and we get paired up with an instructor. We make our way to the plane, get in this like 8-seater airplane, gutted, we're all sitting on the floor, and we go up 12, 14,000 feet. It was nuts. So we're sitting rattling on the ground, instructors on our back, hit the altitude where we're ready to jump. Door flies open, gust of wind just like fills the plane. And I'm like, this just got real. I'm about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Like, what is going on? I see my first friend just boom, just straight down. Didn't even see him, couldn't even hear him. I was like, what? It's like, that's all I heard was just like his voice just scream. Second guy scoots up with the guy. Again, all instructors are on their back. He flies out the door. I'm like, oh gosh, it's my turn. So I inched forward with the instructor on my back, and I'm just like, I'm wetting my pants now at this point. I'm like full of anxiety, full of fear. I look down and I'm like, there's no way I'm jumping. And I'm like reluctant now. And I'm kind of like pushing back a little on the instructor. Like, I'm not going to do this. And I remember he leaned over my shoulder and he goes, Nick, you just got to do it afraid. And without hesitation, like our momentum, like swung us back a little bit, swung us forward, and we just dropped. 1 minute free fall. And I'm just out of my mind, right? Like freaking out, exhilaration, craziness, stomach's in my throat. But it was after the minute, all of a sudden I feel a little tap on my wrist, and my instructor's showing me the altitude. Then he takes my other hand, puts it on the ripcord, and he shows me where to pull. So I end up then pulling the ripcord, chute opens up, and we hit this most beautiful view. It's just so captivating, so peaceful, just like soaring with the chute open, overlooking Chicago. I mean, it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. But it all started with a scary step. I had to do it afraid, right? Of course, we landed. Everything was great. I'll never forget the experience. But that instructor said that to me, and I've never forgot it, DJ, because I just feel like in life, there are so many things in front of us that we know we're supposed to do, big dreams, and we wait for perfect conditions or for fear to be gone for us to take a step towards it. And I just want to encourage people today, do it afraid. Don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait for perfect conditions or for fear to be gone, because as you know, DJ, that's if you're being compelled to do something big, that time will never come. There will never be a time where you won't experience fear. You got to do it afraid, in spite of fear. And when you take that step, the instructor of your life, God's going to supply what you need at the right time. He's going to lead you. He's going to direct you. He's going to guide your hands. He's going to give you the ideas, the words to say. If you'll take that step of faith, God is going to direct you. He's going to establish you. The Bible says that God directs the steps of the righteous. And a lot of people, they're waiting and they're sitting back, and God's going, I'm waiting for you. If you'll take a step, I don't direct your stance. I direct your steps. So if you'll step, that's what I need something to work with here. Give me some faith here. Then I can show up and I can provide, and I can do what you can't do to fulfill those dreams in your life.
Two phrases that come to mind that I use a lot. Movement creates motivation. People aren't motivated when they come to the gym, but when they start moving, Nick, they feel good. The other one is act different than how you feel. The best athletes in the world, they act different than how they feel. They might feel nervous before a game, but they act differently. And then it's almost like a fake it till you make it, right? Just act different. Act. If you don't feel confident, act confident. It's going to follow. If we stick with the analogy here, what I want to jam on a little bit more is it's just a step, right? I'm just looking for one thing. What's one small thing that you can do today? I think if we're looking at the myths or the misconceptions or what holds people back, Nick, is they think they got to take this jump, this leap, this broad jump is what I'm thinking of, right?
Yeah.
And really, man, all you're saying is like, it's one stair. I'm taking one stair. Talk to me a little bit about the mistake people might make when they're thinking, hey, I got to leap really big. And that's not the truth.
That's not the truth. I mean, again, it's like you said, it's not a leap of faith. God's looking for a step of faith. And I think he will establish and direct our steps. The leaps can be intimidating. You know what I mean? I think, and practically speaking, it's like people want to lose weight, they want to train, and it's like they start and they bite off so much more than they can chew or sustain. And I think there's power in sustainment and choosing to go about things at the proper pace and what you can accomplish and what you can do. So don't run first day and go run for 5 miles, run around your block twice at a good pace. It's like, take that step. Is the dream 5 miles? Yeah. Is it a marathon? Maybe, but you don't run a marathon in a day. Take a step and celebrate it when you come back. A lot of people could run around 2 blocks and go, I only did 2 blocks. I'm terrible. I'm never going to accomplish this, yada, yada. No, celebrate it. Then go to 4 blocks, then go to 6 blocks, then go to 8 blocks. It's just taking those steps. And I think the same applies in your everyday life. It's just taking a small step of faith, doing it afraid, and allowing God to show up and do the supernatural.
And I love the phrase "do it afraid," because somebody might not do something because, Nick, they might say, I'm just scared. Well, just do it scared, because doing it scared is better than not doing it at all. We need action, right? Your thoughts determine what you want. Your actions determine what you get. So even if you do it scared, you're still doing it. You're still taking that step. If you're scared to sign up for the 5K, that's fine. Have your fingers shake as you type and you sign up. You still signed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh yeah. I think about the story of Peter walking on water. People give Peter a hard time, but Peter got out of the boat and attempted it. And people think about Peter sinking. Well, Peter also walked on water. Can you imagine the feeling of walking on water and what that experience was like? And you got 11 critics in the boat who never got out. Well, guess who was the closest to Jesus? It was Peter. And I just think, when we do things afraid and we take steps, Jesus loves it, and he's close to us. We could mark up Peter as a failure or whatever, but I think God loves us for trying. And I think that's the core principle of that story to me, is God loves us for trying. And there's so many people in our culture today who are stuck in the comfort, stuck in insecurity, worrying what's going to happen. What if? Well, what if you do? What could happen? How could God take your one step and do something amazing with it? And I just think God doesn't need a lot to do a lot. And if we'll just give what we have, and like you said, take that step afraid, you'd be surprised of what you can accomplish.
Do it afraid. We talk about a little bit about consistency, and I talk a lot about consistency over intensity. So don't go out and run that 5 miles if it's been 5 years since you've done it. Run around the block twice. To me, that's consistency over intensity. But not only doing it once, but do it consistently. And your other chapter I wanted to dive in was chapter 7, the power of consistency. So consistency in the gym is something we preach on a lot. With mental performance, to me, consistency is the key. If you want to be successful, if you want to have XYZ, you got to be consistent on your journey there. Talk to me about chapter 7, the power of consistency. Find your miracle in the mundane.
Yeah. And I think that's the consistency just isn't sexy, is it? I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, everybody wants the glamour moments. I love, even with Joe Burrow, and I'm not a hater for people who post their workouts, but Burrow just said, to the next generation, don't post every workout, just grind consistently. It feels mundane. You're in the dark places, but that's where things become great. It's in the dark places, and that's where you develop. That's where you grow. And I think consistency is one of those things where it's not talked about and it's not Instagrammable. And I think that's what hurts us in our culture today, is we're looking for the clicks and we're looking for instant validation. But when you're consistent and private, you're not getting all of those things. And I just encourage people to understand that in the mundane spaces of your life, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a businessman starting a business, I just think it's in those small areas. I mean, think about this. Think about the mom. Well, let's go back and look at in scripture, DJ, where Jesus feeds the 5,000. I mean, he asked the disciples for what they had. They snagged this kid's, Chick-fil-A meal, and they snagged this meal from him, and Jesus blesses it and multiplies it. and it feeds 5,000 or more people. Talk about an Instagrammable moment. Talk about something powerful. But if you rewind that story, it takes us back to a mom somewhere who was packing a boy's lunch early in the morning. And it was probably not a very sexy moment for her. It was a consistent thing for her. It was a mundane thing for her. But because she did that, a miracle took place later on. And I just think there are so many things and opportunities in our life every day that we consider, I'm just doing this, or I'm doing this again over and over and over again. And I just think those mundane things are producing miracles, and they're producing growth in others. They're producing growth in you. And I just think if we can stay consistent at those things, it's just a matter of time before we see breakthrough. It's just a matter of time before you see growth, you see the opportunities come. I think faithfulness pays, faithfulness gets rewarded in whatever area of life that is, whether it's working out, coaching, building a business, being a parent. When you're faithful in the little, God can trust you with much. And I just think that boils down to consistency. Can you be consistent with what you've been given and trust that the opportunity is going to come at the right time?
This is so great, Nick. You're on fire, man. This is awesome stuff, man. Let's go on to another one. I want to take this one's going to go a little bit deeper here. Chapter 9, you have nothing to prove. Be comfortable in your own skin. Brother, this is a big one. I want you to take some time on this. What does this have to do? Why'd you put in the book, and where do you start with something this big?
Well, like all the chapters, it's deeply personal. DJ, I think we've all struggled and still struggle with being comfortable in who we are and staying in our lane and not comparing. And I think in my life, I've struggled with comparison. And you watch, you flip through everyone else's reel, everyone else's story, and you miss out so much of building your own story and recognizing what's in your story and the significant things in your story. There's this one time where I went to a buddy's gym. It was a startup gym, and it was a group format, and we were pushing sleds, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite workouts. And you push the sled up, there's a guy line and a girl line, right? 2 sleds. And we're pushing it all the way down the gym, turn it on the turf, push it all the way back. And I was like 5th guy in out of 6 guys in my line. And every time someone would push the weight down and push the sled back, they had an opportunity once the round was finished to add weight. And I'm like, it just became like an ego test, right? Like it is. It's like, what am I going to do? So every time a round was done, all the guys would kind of sit there quietly, and the first guy had the decision to add weight or not. And every round he added weight, and all of us refused to take the weight back off. We had the decision: am I going to push his weight, or am I going to take the weight off? And it gets to me, and I'm like, there's no way I'm taking weight off. Like, I'm not prepared for this weight. I can't, I'm not going to effectively finish a workout at this rate. But in the moment, too prideful, I pushed the weight down and back and felt good in the moment. Fast forward 30 minutes later in the workout, there's more things we're doing, more stations. I end up feeling overwhelmed with nausea, run out the gym. I puke my lunch out all over the street, run back in and attempt to finish, like 10% of energy left. But my point is I got stuck comparing and trying to push someone else's weight that I wasn't equipped to push. And I think so many of us in our lives, we're looking around and we're comparing, and we're carrying and pushing unnecessary weight, and I think we're all in different seasons of our life. We all have different dynamics, different stress triggers, different responsibilities. There is no one on this planet that has the exact same blueprint as you and the same purpose as you with the same responsibility as you. And so you have to be so disciplined and focused on, what am I carrying, and what am I trying to prove to people? Why am I looking at other people's weight and trying to put that day? Because I let my ego get in the way, and I compared, and I pushed a weight I wasn't graced to push. It set me back, and I wasn't able to function at my optimum ability. And I think that can apply in our lives, right? Like we're stuck comparing, running someone else's race, not comfortable in our own skin. And it can leave us exhausted. It can leave us doing things out of our nature, out of our character, and put us in unhealthy positions.
I want to ask you a question that it's not in the book, but it's been prevalent in my life with some people that I've been around as a coach, working one-on-one with people. And I think it fits under this chapter. And it's this thought, Nick, that I hear from people sometimes, and it breaks my heart when I hear it. But it's this phrase of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. And when I hear that, man, like I said, my heart breaks. I get emotional even thinking about it, because it breaks my heart because they don't see how amazing that they are. They don't even see what I'm seeing. But as young athletes out there, high school, I mean, even people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, I mean, this is a common thing. I would love to hear from you, Nick. This is something I've been curious to ask you for a couple of weeks now. As a pastor, as a father, what's the response when you hear somebody say, I just don't think I'm enough, man? As a pastor and a father, what's your response, man?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, you're not alone. I think there's times when all of us don't feel like we're enough. I don't know if you ever graduate fully from that temptation of buying into that lie. And I would say that would be the end of my answer in a way. Is it's a lie. You are enough. God created you. And when he created you, he broke the mold. There is no one else on this planet like you that can do what he's purposed you to do. There is no one with the gifts, with the talents, the unique things that he's does. There's no one with your thumbprint. There's no one that can produce the exact sound that you can produce through your vocal cords. I mean, I think when you understand how uniquely made you are and how loved you are before you do anything, I think that is a game changer. When you know that you're loved by God, that he's shaped you, he's uniquely formed you for a purpose that no one else can fulfill. I'd like to say it this way. We need you. We need you to be you, because no one on this planet can do what you can do and can fulfill the purpose that God has shaped you uniquely to fulfill. And so you are enough. You don't have to go into this world searching for approval, because God approves you. You're a child of God. He loves you. The Bible says, while we were yet sinners, God sent his son to die for us. Meaning, when we're messed up, this has nothing to do with what you're providing God, your actions, what you achieve in your life, how much you improve. This is about the moment you were created by God, the moment you were born, he loved you. Right? Not to get too theological or deep here, DJ, but Jesus baptized, he comes up out of the water, and God, with a resounding sound from heaven, this is my son whom I am well pleased. What did Jesus do up until that point? Did he do any miracles? Did he heal anybody? Did he meet any? He had done no ministry up until that point. But God says, this is my son. I'm pleased with him. He's approved. I love him. And I think for each of us, we need to hear those words and let them sink in, that God loves you and he is proud of you and he approves of you. Now you can go into your life in your circumstances knowing that truth.
It's awesome, man. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I know that wasn't a part of the script, but I think it's something that you're the perfect person to ask, and it's real. Like that's a real thing, and I'm hearing it, and I want to address that, and I want to cut that clip out and replay it and replay it and replay it, because it's from a performance standpoint, which I'm looking through the lens of, it is a huge limiter. I mean, you can't be your best, whether it's on the court, on the field, or at home with your spouse, or you can't be your best if you're always thinking, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. You just can't.
Yeah. No, it's so good.
The last one I wanted to go through was, I've heard you say a couple times, it's one of the biggest chapters. So I was like, all right, I got to start this one. I got to see what it's all about. Chapter 10, live within the margins. You say, embrace your God-given limits. Let's close down with this one. I've heard you say a few times, it's the big one.
It is. And I think, dealing with a lot of business owners, a lot of go-getters, overachievers. It's a tough one because there are things we all aspire to be and do. We all want to check off the list, achieve more, do more, become more. And this world doesn't help, because hustle is the way, right? Like grind is the way. And I'm not anti working hard. I'm not be excellent at what you do. Be excellent at everything that you put your hands to. But I think we have to recognize that God's given us limits, time limits, physical limits, mental and emotional limits. And I think we're living in a day and age, DJ, where everyone is pushing those limits to the edge. There's no margin that's being created in our lives. And everyone is just screaming, hustle, 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 hashtag grind, hashtag hustle. Great, work hard. But it's coming at a detriment. It's coming at a detriment of your character. It's unsustainable. I think a lot of us need the faith to say no. I think it takes more faith to say no than it does to say yes to things. We're just living at our max all the time, not taking time to rest, not building margin in our life. Because let's think about it like a glass that you pour water in, you fill it up to the brim. If something bumps that water, that glass, it's going to overflow, right? We're going to compromise the ingredient, what's in it. But if I create margin, if I fill it up 75% and that same interruption hits the glass, there's room there where what's inside is not going to be compromised. And I think that simple illustration can be applied to our daily lives. We're filling our lives up, DJ, with so much. Again, fill in the blank. Kids' games, going over here to this business, going over this birthday party, going over here, working out, doing this, and we're going 100 million miles an hour and we're leaving no margin. Doing a lot of good things. These aren't bad things. I'm talking about good things that we're filling our lives with, but we're leaving no margin for the unexpected. We're leaving no room and creating no space where we can grow in creativity, we can grow in clarity, and we can get we can get better ideas, better strategies, invest into our spiritual and emotional and mental health. I just think we're neglecting ourselves in our approach to achieve more. And when I say, there's power and miracles in the margins, margins to me, it's just about creating boundaries and creating space so that you can be a better you. The best thing you can give your future is a healthy you.
How do you personally, Nick, how do you do this? What does this look like in your life? How do you personally, you or your family, create the margin? I'd be curious to hear your strategy.
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of it for me is on the daily. So as I mentioned earlier, I start my day with quiet space in my study. Sometimes I have worship music on, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm reading a book that I feel like refuels and refreshes me. Sometimes it's a devotional, sometimes it's scripture, whatever that is for people. But for me, I like to do that first thing in the morning for 30 minutes. And then I go to the gym long before I read an email, long before I check social media, long before I get into meetings. I am allowing space. I'm creating space, quiet space for God to speak to me, for me to reset my mind on what's important. What are my priorities? What's significant in this season? To listen, to get quiet, see where my thoughts are leading me, doing some self-assessment. I think the morning start for me is where I've created a lot of that space and a lot of that margin for me. And I also do that when I get home. My work day, 5, 6 p.m., I try to create, even if it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 15, where I'll shut everything down and get quiet out my backyard. Everything from the day, processed it. I got to throw it away if it's bad. I can't take this into my conversation with my kids. My kids don't really care what happened in my big meetings. They just want dad, and they want dad's full attention. Well, if I don't have a finish line for me personally, other people, that how you do it, that's fine. But for me, I need that finish line to really clean the slate, get fresh, so I can be the best father and husband I can be for that other part of the day. And so I just think a lot of it is rhythm on a day-to-day basis like that. But for me, because my job, I work on Saturdays, I work on Sundays, I think building those disciplines in throughout the week is critical for me to sustain excellence, both physically and mentally and spiritually for the long haul.
I couldn't agree more. Nick, I close down with the same question typically, and it's the $1 million question. And so the $1 million question goes like this, Nick. What is something that you know now that you wish you knew, let's say 20 years ago? And I like to take off the table, Nick, anything like, oh, there's nothing because I wouldn't be the type of person I am today. I want to take that out. What's the thing you know now that you wish you knew 15 or 20 years ago as we close down with this last piece?
Wow. That's a good question. I think what I know now that I had only to like, I only know it now because of experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like I would say, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would say, be excellent where you are, be patient. God's going to bring the right opportunities at the right time. I think so many times in my journey, I gave in to the temptation to push doors down instead of allowing doors to open for me. I think oftentimes, and again, this isn't about stepping. This isn't about, I think there's times where you feel compelled and God's waiting on you. But I think we all know that unhealthy ambition can get you into spaces that you weren't designed to sustain. Your character can't sustain it. And I think for me, just trusting that God's going to get me what I need at the right time, that whatever has my name on it will get to me when it's supposed to, and just trusting the architect of my life. I think that for me, I've just seen in my own life, and I've seen in so many other people's lives, people push to get things too fast and they're not prepared to sustain it, if that makes sense. And they can go about pushing. Pushing can look different. A lot of times we go out of character to get things. We lie, we gossip, we undercut, we backbite, so that we look better, and it puts us in the position we think we're supposed to be in, and we get there in an unhealthy manner, and we're not able to sustain it. I've just learned to be at peace with where I am, trust God, and trust that He's going to get me where I need to be at the right time.
Nick Nilson, ladies and gentlemen. Nick, thanks for the time, man. This was awesome. So the book, You Can Live the Dream. Other than the book, or in addition to the book, how can my listeners support you? Where can I point them? How can they learn more about you? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I would say nicknilson.com. If you want to check out my website, you can see all my social media platforms on there. You can order the book if you're a coach or a business owner. You want to get copies for your team. There are discount rates on the website for bulk orders. If that's something that you think would improve your team or your culture, I'd highly recommend it. Seeing a lot of awesome results, seeing how the book has inspired not just individuals, but teams. They're using it as an exercise. And so that's been pretty cool. But no, I just believe it can help people right where they're at and inspire and encourage them in a lot of different ways.
Nick, thanks for your time. Thanks for your focus. Thanks for your wisdom, and thanks for your authenticity today, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, DJ. I appreciate it.